go right ahead.
The next, next item on the agenda is the minutes from the regular meeting. Any additions or corrections?
Let's hear the mayo. Move we accept them.
Chris?
Second.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor, aye?
Who second?
Aye.
Now that Joe started the meeting that way, I'm gonna drag it out for him. And
Okay.
annoy him. Cause he's always in a hurry, I'm gonna slow roll this one. Move approve, move approve, move approve.
Discussion, talk about your assessment report to the Excise board.
Yeah, okay.
That's the next one right there.
Yeah, I know. It's just,
Joe, has any man ever showed you the secret man's handshake? You've never joined that club yet, have you?
I'm a Mason.
Yeah, but there's a different club that
Oh,
you
never
skip.
mind. Just never mind then.
Has to do with, never mind. I'm gonna let this slide.
I just typed it all out so you guys can see, because to me it's easier to see it when it's in front of you than to listen to somebody talk. But, oh, here, shall I?
Now, one of them
We-
took you to court. Yeah, I see you're in the paper.
I'm always in the paper.
I
They
know.
told me that at church the other day. You're in the paper again. I hadn't seen or heard anything of it until they told me, so.
Calm
Very
down,
on,
get out.
very on.
It's just, you know, whatever. Okay, so, where's my paper here? Our numbers are, we're down compared to last year. And let me clarify, I'm using last year's as of this time last year when we did this and we signed off on everything. Since then, we had public service protests that got settled, but those numbers weren't mixed into it. So it's down from compared to this time last year. We got the public service numbers back, and it came up to $41,716,244, and that was down $2,247,846 from last year at this time. That's just the public service. And then there's the countywide assessed value with the TIF numbers in there, and it was down $7,562,419. And then excluding the TIF, we were down $7,509,938. So the total TIF value is $1,209,923. We've got only one public service protest this year. It's Panhandle Eastern again. And then two oil and gas companies that filed a lawsuit, and it's DCP and Targa. So, our ending numbers come out, minus the TIF, $211,754,774. And the other paper I gave you is just a breakdown of the protest and the amounts per school district, to make it easier for you to see the school districts. So the total number in protested dollars is $37,443,226. So don't know what's going to happen with any of that, because that's the total amount that's being protested.
Minetta, are there still pending 2020 and 2019 issues?
I just got my last 2020 public service protest in the mail and haven't got it worked yet because it just came. So it should be settled and then there shouldn't be any of public service. But I still have some of the oil and gas companies that aren't settled yet. So, same ones, Targa, DCP. So.
Do they ever win?
Okay.
meetings ago, there was
Yeah.
a pretty significant
Yes,
adjustment.
okay, so that's, I was
Yeah,
trying to think in my
that's
head,
true.
why are we down so much? Why, because when I compare the numbers that, going through each school district, the cities, except for Winoka, which was kind of flat, but the cities like Alba, Capron, Tacoma, Freedom, they were all up a little bit. It was the rural areas that were down. Well, that's got to be the oil and gas, because we had the oil and gas compressors that we had to take off for the one company, so that was huge. That was with last year, so it fell into this year that we lost a lot
That
this year
revenue.
on that, and that would have been out in like District 6, District 3, and District 1. And then we, a lot of the oil and gas companies, with everything that went on last year, they've packed up and moved a lot of stuff, so all of that's gone. And then we did settle the protest that we had settled, that was 6.5, almost 6.6 million that we lost there with settled protests from this past year. So that's most of the reasons I could come up with for why we would be down so much compared to last year. We're still kind of right even with what 2015 was, but
Percentage-wise, how much are we down? Well, it's hard to tell because on the protest.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's, I wanted to show you guys that because that's money you can't count on that we're gonna get. Even though it's figured into this report, those numbers are figured in here, we can't count on getting that because we don't know what's gonna happen until those protesters settle. So that's why I always wanna make sure and tell the superintendents that, don't count on this much because you don't know what's gonna happen. So,
That's why it's a little worrisome this year when they all budgeted 100%. And I thought, wait a minute, guys.
but there is a few good things. Public service value in 4 major, down there where they put in the wind farms. And since those weren't operational January 1st, we couldn't put them on yet. Of course, it will be public service. It's not gonna be done locally. So I don't have any control over that. I don't know what anything is, that'll all go through the tax commission. But they had electric lines going and we added 5 new electric companies and 4 major was up because of that. So that's a good thing. I mean, at least we were able to pick that up this year that we hadn't in the past. But, we don't know what's gonna happen. So, and the wind farm should be on next year because they're operational now. So I just don't have any information on them. I'm still trying to get it. I've contacted a guy with that company and he's supposed to be getting me some maps and, different things that I need to know exactly where each one sits. So,
Have you contacted other assessors in the major and Woodward counties to see how much they actually contribute to the public service?
well, most of theirs, a lot of them aren't public service. So a lot of them are done locally. That's why there's always lawsuits in those counties. But this one is owned by, I should have looked it up before I came in here. Electric company in eastern Oklahoma bought this one. So since it's an electric company that owns it, it's going public service instead of assessing locally. So,
How about these grow houses? Is there training available for you to learn or you
What
got
to
it?
assess?
How to assess?
yeah.
Well, there's a ton of them going in.
And I think that's the reason Capron's was up. I mean, they got a little bitty one. I can't think of any other reason why Capron, the town itself, would be up. And it has to be the little grow house. I haven't had a chance to study this because I was gone to school all last week and I came back and just did this right away so we could have the numbers and have the meeting. But, nothing else is going on over there. It has, and on personal property. So it's got to be the little grow house that they got, and it's just a tiny one. So,
But Murphy told me a couple weeks ago, there's a grow house northeast of Freedom. I don't know where he was talking about, in Woods County.
information from the state on, it gives us a name of who it is, which, you know, they have funny names. It's never in a person's name. It's usually some business name. But we don't know a location, so we're having to,
Find them on your own.
Find
And that's why
And
I
that's-
felt like we needed to,
we need to do something. I mean,
that's why I thought that they needed to turn those pages into you when
Mhm.
they're signing them, but
mhm.
well,
Well, when it first started, we had all the information, but then somewhere along the line, somebody didn't like that information being out there, and so somehow they got it stopped. I don't know if it was a new law or what it was, but they decided that was confidential,
because we
and
should know
so,
where these things are so
Can
that
they-
we can assess them.
Can they, I thought they couldn't export this stuff out of the state. Apparently they can.
If what's going on, if I believe what's going on is from Sage and a few others, most of these, what we perceive to be illegal grow houses, are going black market out of the country. How do they pull that off? I guess the same reason they closed in the Freedom Call the other day. There was a long article about, Marion, you wrote it, how many they've closed down already in Oklahoma. It's phenomenal.
You've got to do something, though. It's crazy. You can't be using that much inside the state. And I don't think they can sell outside the state, the way the law's right. And now, I say that, and there's a law coming from Congress to make marijuana not illegal anymore. And they skirted the issue, they just took it off the list. Lost a prohibited stuff, they just took it off the list. They didn't say it was okay or anything, they just took it off the list where you can't prosecute. Same thing.
so
Anyway.
if they did that, would that make it where they could put their money in the bank?
Probably.
Probably.
But it still isn't right that we're not able, that we're having to go out and try and find all
Right.
these so that we can get them on the tax roll when you and I have to put our stuff on the tax roll. They need to be putting theirs on there the first year they're on instead of
Yep.
maybe 4 years later,
Yeah.
you know?
Depending on what visual
Right.
inspections have.
Jim Dar sold his property to these guys,
Yeah.
right next to the Methodist church. They also bought the one other side. And he told me it's LLC on top of LLC. It's like 5 or 6 of them to get to some entity in San Francisco. And my understanding, that's not the money. This is a guy that's operating for the money in China.
And is that in Freedom?
Yeah, well, between me and Freedom, probably a mile south.
Okay, that's the big one
The
right
big
here.
one.
Okay. I didn't know if you were talking about another one. I don't know about another one, so, okay.
Well, there's a big one someplace, my son knows about, west of us, north of us, somewhere up there.
When I was up there, you had a guy coming from
Might
another
be the one
town
Randy was telling me about.
Yeah.
You-
do something, a permit,
Mhm.
is that what you, paperwork that you get first, or, I mean, how?
The commissioners have to sign some paperwork for them to be able to get their license and permits and stuff. And, but I don't ever see
Why don't you
that
get
neither
that?
does she. That's a question you're gonna have to ask the commissioners.
Well, the commissioners
Because,
need to get with it here.
Because I asked them, why, because I thought it was a good idea to let her have a copy of that
Yeah.
so that she knows where they're located, but
Unless you can't,
that's not.
unless you can't.
Can't run them down if I don't know where to find them.
Why?
If they have to permit through you,
What was
that's
the
public
number
record, why
for
can't
a
he do
license
that?
in Oklahoma was
This is
3,000
But I don't see.
and 100,000?
You don't see the permitting.
Of course not.
They're the ones signing,
That's
they're the
simple.
ones signing them at their house.
If it's public record, then they can tell you yes or no. And all you gotta do is get on their docket, on their agenda,
And I told Randy.
same with her, get on their agenda. That's a no-brainer, get on their agenda.
That's not gonna work here. I mean,
We've
gotta know where they're permitted. I've got a
I
neighbor,
agree.
for example, I've got a neighbor, I understand, I haven't talked to him. He has a barn out there by his house, and he got a permit to obtain, to raise hens there. Okay, if you got that barn on for 10 cents a foot to store hay, maybe you ought to have it to $15 a foot to raise him.
Well, and then these grow houses, they've got all this equipment, all
Oh,
all that equipment
big
should be
time.
on our taxes,
Well-
on our tax roll.
You know, the grow house on the corner of my corner.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
It's 103 feet by 50 feet. There's, that I can count from the blacktop, there's 11 of those in that grow house in Freedom.
Yeah.
Plus the freestanding buildings, the A-frame buildings that they built.
And that's not counting the ones that they've just converted out somebody's barn out in the middle of nowhere.
Well,
Yeah.
we need to do something, and I think,
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
we need to approve this.
Yeah, I need you guys. to
Let me
sign that
just
whenever.
interrupt one more time.
That's okay.
What these guys have done to my water pressure, Stanberry's water pressure, anybody north of them, Kyle Ludington. You can't get good enough water pressure out of the shower head in my hall bath to take a shower.
Okay, now that's rural water, they do not have to approve them, add on there. Now, water board does not have to accept any new ones if that's, they don't have to do that. No, I was on it when we built it. I know what goes on there. So, if somebody wants water, they don't necessarily get it if they consider the system full.
Yeah.
So that might be a way to control a little bit of it,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have to get the water board to grow some,
Yeah.
there, you know.
Right.
This needs more attention.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
you know, this is not something you sweep under the rug,
No.
whatever. Marion better be doing a good job of reporting this meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
Guys, I'm in the
Sometimes that's not what it takes, you gotta get the public aware to know what's going on. And you know, this is a lot of tax money involved here for the schools.
Yeah.
it is. It
It
is.
could be a lot, because those things, no telling how much equipment, you gotta be able to inspect it to be able to assess it.
When we last year were going to classes and learning about how to assess, when it was,
Yeah.
well, last year and the year before, when it was just coming into law and they were gonna do it, I was floored at the amount of money that some of the different things, that was involved,
Irrigation
A lot of
system,
money.
Oh, the irrigation system, the lights that they've got.
even just the soils they use and the
Yes.
containers, and you don't think about that,
Mhm.
but
Very expensive
yeah,
stuff.
everything, it was,
Mhm.
so.
Well, if you're gonna tax me for my baler, well, hey, you need to be taxing them for every animal.
Absolutely. I pay enough property tax, if I pay mine, I write my check every year that really, that much?
Yeah.
I guarantee those grow houses are way more than my equipment,
Oh, yeah.
and they're probably not paying anything, or they paying anything now at all?
What's the square footage for a building, isn't it? And if it's a fabric building, it's probably
But
cheaper.
then, everything inside is on personal property.
Okay.
Oh.
So you do have a few of them,
Yeah.
but not all.
I got a girl that I stuck her on that, and she's gone after him, so.
Oh, that's good. She's finding
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it's
Well, that's
just,
good.
it's just hard to find them, and then it's hard to get in contact with them, and then get them to come in and tell you anything, and there again, how do you know they're telling you the truth?
Yeah.
Unless you go inspect it, and
Right.
I just
Well, you
haven't
talk to
had the
Murdoch
time
and
and the
talk to
help.
Peterson about, I need to change the law that makes you have to be able to go inside and inspect it.
Yeah, we're supposed to be able to, so,
And get the district attorney and the sheriff to go with you.
we probably have to on some of them.
Yeah, they
They
would.
aren't gonna,
I bet they would, they'd throw that in there.
Yeah, so,
And then there's those
Either that or
that
the-
translator.
The
Or
able.
they'll convince you that you need a
Or
translator.
the Able Commission that does the stuff on that.
mhm.
Somebody. Okay, we beat that in the ground.
I move
Thanks.
we need a motion on this.
Yeah, need a motion on this.
I move we approve the
Second.
assessor's deal.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Monthly appropriations.
Okay, so
originals because Shelley needs an original, the auditor's office needs an original, and I need an original because I have to make so many copies of it. They are blurry, you can't read them.
One of the things on these compressors, you know, that rule that came in and said they could pull those off, they use those for fast recovery. In other words, they pump gas back down the hole and they supposedly have pressure down there to lift the fluid. The reason why we've lost a lot of those is these companies have decided to just slow it down and put a pumping unit on and get rid of these compressors because they were actually costing money to run those that we were having to pay for. The producer, the royalty people were giving them free gas to run that. Okay, now we're giving them free gas to run a pumping unit, but it's not nearly as extensive as those compressors were. So it's a, for your stool people, it's, in the long run, it's probably not gonna hurt anything because, you know,
Right, they decided that it was.
take it out slower and cheaper and, you know, so that's a little consolation for the school districts, I think.
Hopefully we can find enough of the marijuana things, and the new ones, the big ones.
I would go after him with a passion.
And we're gonna have the wind farms too.
Yeah.
I just don't know,
Yeah,
With
it'd be
it
nice
being
for them
public
to make it
service,
for the
there's-
oil and gas.
we just get a number, we don't know anything, so.
How much faith do we have in the public service assessment? I'm gonna ask you another question. Railroad is a public service. All right, when they abandon a property, like the Buffalo routes, you know, and they still own some of that property, does the railroad pay property tax on what's been abandoned that they've never released?
I don't know.
Well, how can you find that out?
Since it's public service, all I see is the name of the company and a number. I have no idea what
Is being
is,
actually
what is
assessed.
in that number, what is actually there.
Well, how do we find, who's in contact with the state assessment board or whoever assesses it? Anybody? I mean, is that an elected office? How do we know?
I mean, well, like the people that work in that department of the tax commission, they're just people that are hired, no, it's not elected, so.
We just I get where you're going, we just automatically assume that everybody's taking care of
That's
business.
that's a sore subject
Yeah.
with me. I'm a real sore subject with another company, but I haven't been able to get any information on that.
Well, I've got a problem that, you know, some of those railroad right-of-ways were released back to, and it's on record, back to the landowner on the side. Some of them they didn't. Now, the railroad company withheld all the minerals, they kept all the minerals. But the physical property, however much that easement is, they still own some of it in our pastures. And they just want well, it's been years ago, they just wanted $500 an acre for what was about $15 an acre, because they've got, that railroad property has a major liability on environmental stuff. They had crystal ties on them, you know, that's major. So I'm sitting there wondering, well, are they taxed because they kept their property? And where do we find that out? You know, I've got 3 miles.
Yep.
3 miles of railroad property that goes across me, that the railroad still owns.
They own that south of me?
Yes.
See, I don't know what's in mine.
No, on the urban part, or the Urbans and the McGills, I think, they still own those.
See, when I bought that place,
Yeah.
everything was mine.
Yeah.
Somebody had bought it from them years ago, and that's why it's a stinking crooked.
It is. Yeah.
That's why it's all, you know, it's a full section altogether out there now, but it's 2 miles long, a mile and a half.
Lots of fence line.
Oh, Yeah, gee, never get that fence built, did we?
No, but I'm working on it.
All right, whatever.
But, you know, that is a problem. The railroad hung on to some of those properties.
Some of that,
And they have, it's not gone through your office yet as to whether they relinquish their
weird.
deal. And I'm just wondering, you know, are they paying tax on it even though
I would think they should be, but
Well, I
they
think so.
didn't.
that's public service though?
Yep. Mhm. So I don't know.
I think you got a whole bunch to sign.
Very good point, Chris.
Those first.
And when that happened way back when, a jillion years ago,
Yeah.
did they actually do a deed? Or
Yeah, mine did a
was it
deed.
just
Yeah,
like,
my little deal, they did a deed.
okay, because I know I've run into with, the Department of Transportation, you know, when they're doing the right-of-ways.
Yeah.
Years ago, there weren't deeds. There weren't any deeds filed or anything. Now, in the last several years, they've been filing deeds whenever they take additional property or get additional property. But the early ones didn't have deeds filed, so it sure makes it difficult to split out that land and get it all
Yeah,
right.
I said I
when there's
got
no
deeds on
deeds.
mine. The lawyer said everything was good.
And he's the only one bonded.
Assumed that they knew what he was doing.
Do we want to approve those monthly appropriations?
Yeah, entertain a motion to approve the monthly appropriations.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I make the motion. Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carried. Any other business we need to do? Motion to adjourn, I move, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.